The Speed Freak Killers is the name given to a serial killer duo, Lauren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine, together initially convicted of 4 murders, 3 jointly, and suspected in the deaths of as many as 72 people in and around San Joaquin County, California, based on a letter that Shermantine wrote to a reporter in 2012. They received the Speed Freak moniker due to their habitual methamphetamine abuse. Herzog committed suicide and passed away on the 16th of January 2012. Shermantine remains on death row in San Quentin State Prison in San Quentin, California. Lauren Joseph Herzog, born on the 8th of December 1965, and Wesley Wes Howard Shermantine Jr., born on the 24th of February 1966, grew up in the town of Linden, California, and lived on the same street. They were both friends with one another because there were not many other children in the neighborhood to play with, and it appears that they didn't have any other friends throughout high school and into adulthood. Shermantine's father was a successful local contractor and real estate developer who frequently spoiled Wesley with gifts and money throughout his life. Wesley and Lauren were both avid hunters and fishermen who spent much of their childhood exploring the San Joaquin County countryside. They graduated from Linden High School in 1984 and took pleasure in bullying other people, drinking alcohol, and using drugs, especially methamphetamine, in their apartment in nearby Stockton, California. During this time, Lauren had a brief affair with a young woman named Kim Vanderheiden. The citizens of Linden, a small town with fewer than 2,000 people, 95 miles east of San Francisco, were long aware of the duo's reputation as methamphetamine users and also knew them as regulars in the Linden Inn bar, which was owned by Kim's father. Kim's 25-year-old sister, Cindy Vanderheiden, of Clements, California, went missing after leaving the Linden Inn with Herzog and Shermantine on the 14th of November 1998. Investigation into her disappearance continued until 1999 with Shermantine as the prime suspect. In mid-January 1999, Shermantine's car was repossessed and subsequently searched by the San Joaquin Sheriff's Department. Cindy Vanderheiden's blood was discovered in the car while DNA test results were being confirmed. The Sheriff's Department focused on Herzog and Shermantine's friends and suspected accomplice who was extensively questioned. Herzog ultimately divulged incriminating details such as describing how Shermantine had shot a hunter that they had ran into while on a vacation in northern Utah in 1994. Utah police confirmed that the hunter had been indeed killed, but his murder was still classified as unsolved. Herzog said that Shermantine was responsible for killing Henry Howell, 41, who was shot dead and found parked off a road near Highway 88 in Alpine County near Hope Valley with his teeth and head bashed in. Herzog said that he and Shermantine passed Howell parked on the highway and Shermantine stopped, grabbed Howell's shotgun, killed him, and stole the little money he had. Additionally, Herzog gave specific details about how Shermantine killed Robin Armatrout, 24, whose nude body was found stabbed nearly a dozen times on the east bank of Porter Creek near Linden. Herzog and Shermantine were arrested in the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Department and charged with several counts of murder, each on the 17th of March 1999. In 2001, a jury found Shermantine guilty of 4 murders, those of Vanderheiden, the robbery murder of drifters Howard King, 35, and Paul Raymond Kavanaugh, 31, whose bodies were found shot to death in a car off a remote road on Roberts Island on the 27th of November 1984, and 16-year-old Chevelle Chevy Wheeler, who disappeared in 1985 from Franklin High School in Stockton after telling friends she was leaving school to go with Shermantine to his family cabin in San Andreas. During his trial, numerous witnesses testified that they had been brutalized by Shermantine. He was accused of severely arring or sodomizing 5 different women, including a babysitter who claimed she was attacked when she went to get money he owed her. Shermantine's sister disclosed that she'd also been essayed by the 2. One woman claimed that after rear-ending her car, he held her hostage with a knife. When she pulled over to exchange insurance information, she leaped out of his moving vehicle and made it to safety. Shermantine's ex-wife also spoke about how he had abused her severely for years, even while she was pregnant, and held their kids in her lap. Shermantine was sentenced to death and is on death row in San Quentin State Prison. Herzog was charged with 5 counts of murder in 1999, those of Vanderheiden, Howell, Kavanaugh, Armtrout, and King. In his 2001 trial, a jury found him guilty on 3 murder counts, Vanderheiden, Kavanaugh, and King, the lesser charge of accessory to murder in the Howell account, and acquitted him on the Armstrong count. Hezrog was given a 78-year sentence. An appeals court overturned all of Hezrog's convictions in August 2004, ruling that 3 of Hezrog's 4 confessions were coerced. In the case of the 4th, that of Van der Heyden, a retrial was ordered. This retrial never took place. Rather, a plea bargain was reached and Hezrog pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and furnishing amphetamine in the Van der Heyden case and to being an accessory to murder in the Kavanagh, King and Howell cases. Accordingly, Hezrog's sentence was reduced to 14 years with credit for 6 years served. With credit of his sentence for good behaviour, Hezrog served 11 years in prison and was in a position to be paroled by 2010. Opposition to the inevitability of Hezrog's parole was extremely vocal, especially from the victims' families. That no California county wanted to take him for parole led the California Department of Corrections to parole him in a trailer stationed outside the front gate of the High Desert State Prison in Susanville, California in Laskin County in September 2010. He committed suicide in January 2012, hanging himself inside his trailer. He did so shortly after bounty hunter Leonard Padilla informed Hezrog that Shermantine was planning to disclose the location of a well and 2 other locations where the duo buried their victims. Previously, none of their victims' bodies had been found. Both men maintained that the other did the killing in all cases and emphatically denied any culpability. In February 2010, while Shermantine waited on death row, his sister Barbara received letters from him identifying locations of victims in an abandoned well on Flood Road near Linden, California. She then turned these letters over to the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department followed up on the lead, but in an interview with the property owner, the owner stated that the wells in question were sealed before the victims disappeared. No further action was taken at that time. More came about in February 2012 based on bounty hunter Padilla's promise to pay Shermantine $30,000 for information. A map drawn by Shermantine and additional information given again led authorities to the same Linden, California well site that he'd mentioned in 2010. More than 1,000 human bone fragments were discovered. The bones were tested by the California Department of Justice for DNA profiling. In March 2012, the FBI's evidence recovery team was asked to assist in the overall investigation, in part because of how the excavation of the Linden well was handled. The identity of the remains recovered in the well was announced to the public on the 30th of March 2012. They were those of 2 Stockton, California teens missing since the mid-1980s. Kimberly Ann Billy, 19, and Joanne Hobson, 16. The remains of an additional victim and an unidentified fetus were also found in the well. 2 separate burial sites in Calaveras County, California were investigated in February 2012 based on a letter Shermantine wrote to Padilla that detailed possible locations of victims. Shermantine located sites near the property formerly owned by Shermantine's parents. Bodies from these 2 sites were recovered, an identified body and Van der Heyden. No additional remains were discovered. Shermantine was briefly released from death row into police custody in September 2012 to lead authorities to 4 additional abandoned wells where he stated that more victim remains would be found, all near the town of Linden, done because Padilla had paid Shermantine an additional $28,000. In early January 2013, the FBI began excavating a well site which they hoped would yield more victims' remains. Shermantine declined to speak further to authorities. On the 22nd of February 2013, the FBI announced that they had ended the search for victims based on Shermantine's information. 2 sites he had indicated had turned up nothing and Shermantine also claimed to know the locations of the Cow Mountain recreation area of the bodies of victims killed by other death row inmates. Lake County sheriffs were skeptical that the bodies would be successfully recovered in a large park, so no searches were conducted. Since 2012, several victims' families and elected officials have alleged that the SJCS's office interfered and deliberately hampered with the continued search for additional possible victims of the Speed Freak killers. In 2010, Shermantine wrote a letter to California State Senator Kathleen Galgiani revealing the locations of the remains of additional victims. In 2012, Galgiani sponsored the use of taxpayer funds to search for additional victims of the pair and sought to simplify protocol granting incarcerated persons like Shermantine permission to participate in such excursions. She turned the letter over to law enforcement and later alleged the missing person records related to the Speed Freak killers case had been deleted, hampering with further investigation. In 2014, the mother of a missing woman filed a suit against the SJCS's office for mishandling the remains found in the Linden well. In 2015, a retired FBI agent corroborated her claims, alleging that the SJCCO deliberately used a backhoe to dig up the remains, mangling them to prevent identification so that the absence of certain files wouldn't be discovered. In 2018, the sheriff-elect of San Joaquin County announced that the Speed Freak killers case would be reopened. The total number of mutual victims of Hezrog and Shermantine remains unknown and speculative. Both were convicted of the murders of 4 people and are believed to be responsible for the deaths of at least 19 people. Both men targeted random victims and killed 4. They were said to go out hunting, shooting individuals to death, and in some cases kidnapping women, harrying them and stabbing them to death. Afterwards, in Calaveras County, they would dispose of their dead bodies in mine shafts, isolated hillsides, and beneath trailer parks. Prior to his arrest, Shermantine frequently told relatives and acquaintances that he had around the outskirts of Stockton. In a confrontation with one woman he had tried to hour in a trailer park, Shermantine allegedly told her, after he'd pushed her head to the ground, Shermantine stated that there could have been up to 72 victims in a statement he sent to a local Sacramento news station in March 2012. Yet he asserted that he would withhold the information unless Leonard Padilla gave him the $33,000 he demanded. Shermantine wrote, "The following is a list of their known victims and several other missing people who have been mentioned as possible victims. 16-year-old Ruth Ann Lehman disappeared from Modesto, California in 1982 after she became acquainted with the 2 men, both in their 30s, on the 19th of August. 3 blocks from her house at Teresa Street and Carver Road was where Lehman decided to meet the men later that evening. She left her Clayton Avenue apartment that day at about 8:45 p.m. She said she was travelling on foot to Sam's Food City to get a soda. In reality, Ruth did show up to the shop, but she quickly left and was never seen again. The 2 men who were supposed to meet Ruth that night she disappeared were questioned by authorities, but both of them denied any involvement in the case. Hezrog and Shermantine are thought to be suspects in her case. Ruth and a female acquaintance travelled to the Calais County frog jump with Hezrog before she vanished. According to Hezrog, he and Shermantine were driving a truck on the 1st of September 1984 along Highway 88 in Hope Valley, California, several miles south of Lake Tahoe and west of the Nevada border in a remote location, where they passed a vehicle parked on the side of the road. The vehicle's driver, Henry Lee Howell, 41, from Santa Clara, California, had pulled to the side of the road because he was intoxicated. Shermantine stopped the truck, got out, and allegedly shot Howell with a shotgun. 2 months after the murder of Howell, on the 27th of November 1984, Herzog and Shermantine were out driving again on Roberts Island, California, located just southwest of Stockton, where they passed a parked 1982 Pontiac. Hezrog told detectives that they turned around, approached the car, and grabbed their shotguns as they exited the truck. Hezrog and Shermantine shot and killed the driver, Howard Michael King III, 35, while he sat behind the wheel, and then dragged the passenger, Paul Raymond Kavanaugh, 31, out of the passenger door and shot him at point-blank range. The tire tracks found at the scene were eventually revealed to match Shermantine's vehicle, which was a red pickup truck that witnesses later claimed to have seen in the vicinity of Roberts Island before King and Kavanaugh were killed. Kimberly Ann Billy, 19, disappeared from Stockton, California on the 11th of December 1984. 16-year-old Joanne Hobson disappeared from Stockton on the 29th of August 1985. In February 2012, acting on Shermantine's directions, authorities found over 300 human bones and some personal items in an abandoned well in Linden, California. Billy's bones were in the well as those of Hobson. On the 8th of September 1985, Hesrog and Shermantine met Roberta Ray Robin Jones, amateur, 24, at Park in Stockton. They were supposed to go out drinking together, but instead they had headed to a farm close to Linden, not far from where the both men lived. Shermantine at some point had started airing and beating Armtrout. After stabbing her more than a dozen times, he dumped her on the bank of Potter Creek. Investigators noticed that most of the stab wounds were in the back and chest regions when a dove hunter subsequently discovered her. Her mother last saw her getting into a red pickup truck with the two men. Cheville Yvonne Chevy Wheeler, 16, skipped school on Wednesday the 16th of October 1985 and was last seen getting into a red pickup truck outside Franklin High School in Stockton. She asked her friend to tell her father about what she had done if she didn't return by the end of the school day because she appeared hesitant about making the trip. The friend did inform her father when Chevy didn't show up, and her father then called the police. Shermantine was instantly identified by authorities as a prime suspect since he was familiar with the Wheeler family. Shermantine was found to be the owner of the red pickup truck. Blood and hair samples taken from the cabin Shermantine owned in San Andreas matched Wheeler. Susan Robin Bender, 15, left her family's home in Modesto on the 25th of April 1986 to stay with friends in Carmel, California. She was last observed making a phone call to the former Greyhound bus depot on 10th Street and G Street in Modesto. She was seen entering a full-sized olive green 1977 Ford van outside the station, and she's never been seen again. Authorities investigated Herzog and Shermantine as possible suspects in 2012 but were unable to provide a link. Foul play is suspected in her case. On the 3rd of June 1986, 31-year-old Sylvia Lord Standley disappeared in Modesto, California. She was released from the Stanislaus County Women's Facility on Oakdale Road that day, and she then called her family and said she would get a ride home. She was last seen getting into a blue or green truck. Her case remains unsolved. Gail Marie Marks, 18, accompanied her mother to the San Joaquin County Mental Health Department in Stockton, California on the 18th of October 1988. She then walked alone to the local DMV to get an identification card. She made it to the DMV because a few days later her card was mailed to her address. After leaving the DMV, she contacted her mother and left a message. She has never been heard from again. Shermantine and Hesrog were investigated in relation to a case in 2012. 47-year-old Philip Cabot Lloyd Martin was a transient who was last seen in North Stockton, California on the 30th of September 1993. On that day, he forgot to pick up his daughters from school, and no one has seen or heard from him since. Martin's daughter told authorities that her father had worked with Shermantine and that, as a young girl, she had chosen him from a lineup of pictures. His daughter said she believed Martin, Shermantine and Hesrog used drugs together. Martin's case remains unsolved. Tracy Diane Melton, 32, disappeared from Stockton, California on the 6th of May 1998. A bone fragment located in Linden, California in 2003 was identified as hers in April 2011, but her family was not notified until January 2012. Evidence pointed to Shermantine and Hesrog as suspects. Vanderheiden, who was killed by the pair, vanished a few months after Melton, and detectives have never ruled out the pair in Melton's case. Cynthia Ann Cindy Vanderheiden, 25, disappeared from Clements, California on the 14th of November 1998. In 1999, Hesrog and Shermantine were charged together with her murder as well as other deaths. Vanderheiden's skull was found in a ravine in San Andreas, California in February 2012. Original sketches of the man seen kidnapping Gerecht. In August 2012, Shermantine wrote a letter to the Stockton Record after Hesrog committed suicide in January 2012, where he pointed out that Hesrog bore a resemblance to the composite of the person who kidnapped. Commenting on the likeness Hesrog bore to Gerecht's kidnapper, witness Karina Rodriguez commented, "At Shermantine's direction, law enforcement began excavating an abandoned well in rural Linden, California in February 2012, where Hesrog and Shermantine disposed of their victims. Thousands of bone fragments belonging to the 5 different individuals were recovered from the well, some of which were believed to potentially belong to Gerecht. However, DNA profiling completed later that year excluded her as a possibility. The bones believed to have been hers were determined to be those of a 19-year-old, Kimberly Billy, who disappeared in 1984. In January 2013, further excavations of abandoned wells in the area were completed, but yielded no further remains. In 2015, a legal motion was filed by attorney Mark Gregos on behalf of a detective who was informed by the SJ Sheriff's deputy to a pair of Mary Jane shoes discovered in one of Lyndon's wells bore similarities to the shoes Gerecht was last seen wearing. According to the detective, SJ police refused to show him the shoes, both physically and as well in photographs, and the shoes have not been examined by the Hayward Police Department. In December 2020, suspected serial killer David Emery Mish was arrested for Gerecht's murder after he was linked to the crime via fingerprints left on Michela's scooter at the abduction site.